Hello and welcome to another episode of All Politics is Local. I'm your host, John Tian. All Politics is Local is a production of the Greater Blackstone Valley Democrats. For more information about the Greater Blackstone Valley Dems, feel free to visit our website, www.gbvdems.org. We have yet another great show planned for you tonight. With me in the studio is Dr. Donald Berwick, candidate for governor of Massachusetts. Dr. Berwick, thank you so much for making All Politics is Local a stop on the campaign trail.
It's nice to be here, John. Thanks for having me.
It's wonderful to see you. I'm so happy to have you here. Myself, I am a very big supporter of yours, and I'm ready to vote for you both in the primary and in the general election when you win the primary. However, this doesn't constitute an endorsement from the Greater Blackstone Valley Dems. Let's be clear about that. As a political action committee approved by the Democratic Party, we cannot make any endorsements during a primary.
Thanks a lot.
Personally, I'm all in favor of your candidacy, so it's wonderful to see you today, and thank you so much for being here. We can just dive right into the issues, I think. Today, a big ruling came out. The Supreme Court in the Hobby Lobby case has ruled that apparently corporations are not only people, but they can have sincerely held religious beliefs, which is just, to my mind, egregious. Your thoughts? I know that you've already put out a statement about the ruling, so your thoughts on that?
Well, this is evidence that women's rights, reproductive rights, and other rights continue to be under pressure in our country. We've got to stand up and protect women and anyone that's put at disadvantage. I think this is it's a sad day for women's health, and it's really emphasizes the importance of having progressive, bold leadership in our government to keep struggling to make sure that people have the rights that they deserve.
One of the key things that I see out of this ruling, which really frosts me, is that Hobby Lobby's insurance will cover Viagra for men. They'll cover vasectomies for men. And yet, they want to disallow contraceptive protection for women.
Yeah, full disclosure, say my eldest son, was on the Justice Department team trying to protect contraception coverage. So I have more than a professional stake in this. Yeah, look, John. I mean, money controls far too much in this nation, and big donations, big donors, big power takes rights away from people. One of the reasons I'm running for governor is because I want to protect the interests of people who otherwise are made vulnerable, and that includes, in this case, women and their reproductive rights. Absolutely.
So thank you very much for standing up about that, and I loved it when I looked at your website today, and you already had a statement up there. I mean, it was up within minutes of the ruling, it seemed to.
It's a fight we've got to keep fighting.
Absolutely. So a lot of issues that you cover on your website, for everything from basic values to the corrections department in Massachusetts. So some things are more topical than others, and certainly casinos is one of the bullet points on your website. We had a real campaign struggle here in Milford just last year about the casino. Foxwoods wanted to locate a casino here.
I know.
I was proud to serve as the data coordinator for the Casino-Free Milford effort, and that was one of the greatest campaigns that I ever worked on in my life. We had people from all walks of life and all ideologies. My truck famously has a lot of bumper stickers on the tailgate, and they're all Democratic bumper stickers on there, and one of the guys, I had a Casino-Free Milford billboard mounted on the back of my truck, and I was driving that around town. One of the other guys who had the same billboard had opposite bumper stickers to mine, and the one that we had in common: keep Milford casino free. That was a tremendous campaign, and now we see with the recent SJC ruling about getting the repeal the deal question onto the ballot, that again casinos are in the news, and it looks like it may be an issue in this election. Your thoughts on casinos?
Well, I'm the only candidate in the Democratic slate opposing casinos and for the repeal. I took that position a year ago, before all of the current wave of interest. That's because of the evidence. We know what happens with casinos. There are over 20 states have them, plenty of experience. They hurt small business. They're actually job killers. People say, well, they had jobs. They had some, but small businesses close. The evidence from studies at the University of Buffalo is that for every slot machine, there's one job lost.
Wow.
They add DUI, petty crime, safety issues arise in the communities they're in and nearby communities. They will not add the revenue they're projected. They'll cannibalize the lottery, and they add mental health problems. They add gambling addiction to communities, and gambling addiction is really, really destructive. And then we have to add therapy and support to families and victims of gambling addiction, which again will use public funds so the revenue we generate is eaten into. It's a very, very bad idea for the Commonwealth to have gone in that direction. I'm delighted by the Supreme Court decision, and I certainly support repeal. I think that's going to happen. And I'll say also, John, there's something bigger happening here, if you ask me. If you watch what happened community by community that have rejected the casinos, you're seeing a mobilization here of the people. This is really democracy at work at the grassroots level in a way that we need more examples of.
Oh, absolutely. Like I said, I mean, I've got friends in town who fly the Gadsden flag from their flagpole at their house. They fly that "Don't Tread on Me" flag, but they are my friends. We found common ground on the casino issue, and we're searching for common ground in other areas. It really is a tremendous thing to see that we can come together across our ideology, or our ideological gap.
Good for you, good for you. If we don't speak up, money, power will control things. There's this slope the country's on in which wealth asserts its merit and acquires power, but this is about people and their right to control what happens to them. And I personally hope that the casino repeal goes through, but I hope even more than that, that the wave of the sense of self-efficacy and the ability to speak up and control your future becomes more general. This has to apply to our education system, in our roads and rail, and our safety net for people who are in trouble. We need people to speak up, and that's what's happening. It's very exciting.
It really is. And you know, another thing that I loved about your website, reading through it, was the quote from Hubert Humphrey that you have on there, that we need to care for people in the dawn of life, our children, and for the people in the twilight of their lives, our elderly, and for those people that are marginalized, those in the shadows, the sick, the needy, et cetera. And you know, Hubert Humphrey was one of my favorite politicians growing up. When he ran for president in '68, I was only 10 years old at the time, but I was a vociferous supporter of Hubert Humphrey. I was politicized, I guess, at an early age. But you know, I loved that quote and seeing that on your website.
He said the moral test of government, and I think that moral test is in jeopardy now. I worked in Washington. I ran Medicare and Medicaid for President Obama for 17 months till the Republicans blocked my confirmation. But you could see the backing away, the timidity that can accumulate if we don't stand up for people who need help, which someday is all of us. You know, this is not a win-lose situation. This is everybody gaining when we help people who are in trouble, people in the shadows of life.
We're all in this together, aren't we? I mean, that's really what it comes down to, and you know, that's what government is all about. I've said on this show many times. You know, people say to me things like, "Oh, you Democrats, all you want to do is give people stuff. You give people stuff to buy their votes." Well, no, that's really not what I think it's all about. I just believe that government can and should be a force for good in people's lives. And we get the government we deserve. We're a democracy. We vote them in.
I agree, and I think we need political leaders who stand up for that kind of voice. That's in a way why I'm running. I think the voters are going to have a choice in this race between timidity and boldness. I want to stand up without any apology for human rights, for justice, for equality. I think the anti-casino stand is part of that. As you know, I'm sure we'll talk about it later, I'm also the only candidate fully in support of single-payer health care, Medicare for all.
Right.
It's a way for us to stand up for the kind of health care we really want and to avoid the waste that comes with a highly complex system, which is really feeding great sources of wealth right now, but not really helping people in communities.
Right, and that comes back to your statement today about the ruling in the Hobby Lobby case, talking about the need for Medicare for all. Obviously, we need to get away from an employer-sponsored healthcare system that's failing our people.
Yeah, it's the healthcare payment system. You know, if you don't have payment that makes sense and that actually addresses real issues, then you don't get delivery of care that actually meets needs. And we can change that here.
Absolutely.
We made healthcare a human right in this country in 2006, 8 years ahead of the rest of the country. We can be the first state to show what rational payment looks like that saves resources by not wasting them and stands up for people, and that's what single-payer care can do.
And I noticed on your website as well, I think under your healthcare bullet, it said something like we have 98% covered for adults and over 99% of children. And I think even with the implementation of Obamacare, that's actually gone up.
Yeah.
We're closer to, like, I think 0.5% of our population is no longer covered. tremendous results here.
We
in
should feel
Massachusetts.
so proud of this state. That showed that while the rest of the country is fussing about whether it can do it, we went ahead and did it. And the same thing can now apply to creating the healthcare system we really want. We can go ahead and do it. And the healthcare payment system we want, we can go ahead and do that.
Absolutely, and so we see things where Massachusetts leads the country. Massachusetts has really been leading this nation forward since before it was a nation.
Absolutely.
But in things like marriage equality, we were the first state to legalize marriage equality. How many states now? They're falling like dominoes.
Absolutely. We started the national trend, and finally justice and human rights will prevail with respect, I hope, to people's choices to marry the person they love.
Right.
I was at the celebration in Cambridge just 2 weeks ago, was it, of the 10th anniversary of the first same-sex marriage in the nation, in the history of the nation, happened in Massachusetts. This is a state that has tremendous potential. Big problems, but we know what to do about them.
Right. Well, we're a smart state. We have the educated populace to really deal with these problems and to really get things done. So let's segue that right into LGBT rights. That's yet another area on your website where you talk about what we need to do. So
another vulnerable population. In my convention speech, which was 2 weeks ago,
tremendous speech, by the way.
Thank you very much. Thanks. Yeah, I wanted to speak from the heart, and I chose as one of the themes the Pledge of Allegiance. We say liberty and justice for all. And one of my themes is all means all. The concept of a marginalized person or an illegal person is just wrong. And we're in this together. For the LGBT community has for centuries been victimized as other and different and separate and somehow not included. We act as if we can choose to give them rights, give the LGBT community rights or not. No, they're their rights. They're birthrights.
They're human rights.
They're human rights, and I feel that absolutely about that community. They fought for their rights. This state has led the nation with respect to marriage equality, but there's more to do.
Oh, absolutely.
LGBT kids, for example, in schools still suffer from high rates of depression, high suicide rates. For LGBT youth, suicide rates about 3 times higher than for the normal population.
And homelessness as well. They very often get thrown out of their homes.
Very vulnerable population.
Very.
And among that group, also transgenders. Now the transgender people are now really struggling for rights that they really need to have in public accommodations. Suicide rates in transgenders is 9 times the rate in the normal population, in the regular population, and that means that we're making people feel excluded who are us. They're us. They're with us, and we need to stand
there
up
are relatives.
for that.
I have a transgendered relative. I know the pain that she felt, and we can't exclude these people. No. They are us, like you say.
It's sort of a test case of the moral test, and I welcome it, and I'll fight every day for those rights.
So speaking of all means all, we do have a small segment that we do on this show now. It's been a tradition since Steve Abraham was here, and he gave me a bumper sticker. So Matt, if you could pull up the picture of the bumper or the tailgate of my truck. There we go. That's the most recent iteration of the tailgate of my truck. It's relatively infamous throughout the Senate district here because I drive all over the district for my work. And so, unfortunately, I've already got my Don Berwick bumper sticker on there, so you were unable to actually bring me a bumper sticker today because you knew you didn't need one.
I'm glad you got there early.
But in any case, I do have my Don Berwick T-shirt here that I'm very proud of. So here we go, and it is actually the right size for me, which that's a plus over last week's shirt, which was so small that I had to give it away. But here's the all means all.
Means all.
Team Berwick and all means all. There were a lot of these at the convention, and I'm very proud to have that one, and I'll be wearing it with pride.
It's the most. There are many great things about running for office, John, but one of them is to see this coming forward of support and people who embrace it. It kind of bonds us together. It's really neat.
It really is, yes. So moving back to our issues here, let's go right back to the top, jobs and economy. Let's have your thoughts on where we need to go.
It's issue number one in a way. I mean, if you travel with me around the state, you'll hear people concerned about their economic future. They sense the growing inequalities in our nation. They don't like it. Everyone knows someone who's lost a job. Everyone knows someone who's worried about losing a job. And a robust economy is an economy that where all means all. We're all involved. So fighting for for jobs, job growth, economic opportunity is absolutely key. In my platform, there's any candidate that says, "Oh, I have the answer. Here's the one answer." They're blowing smoke. That's not true. But there's a constellation of things we can do. Building attractive communities, smart growth in communities. When you have a community that's supported to have livable housing, affordable housing, safe parks, recreation, streets, infrastructure, appropriate transportation, MBTA stops if you're in the Boston area, Regional Transit Authority if you're here. If it's an attractive place to be, people come there. And if they come there, businesses come there to serve them. And when businesses come there, jobs grow. That's one. Second is our schools. We can have and we need to have much better alignment with our education system, our public higher education, community colleges and state university, and elementary and secondary schools, and businesses. In the country of Switzerland, I believe 70% of 15-year-olds, they're in school, but they're also in relationship to a company. They're learning. They're learning the trade. We've seen the labor unions lead in this. Labor unions have apprentice centers.
Sure.
And young people or people who want to get into it, they come there, they train. There's an alignment between education and work, which is really, really exciting. We could do that here much more. Third is innovation investments. They paid off in many parts of the state. We could double down on it. If you, in Boston especially, we have now the Seaport Growth District. We have innovation laboratories. There's some in Holyoke. I think that's a tremendous opportunity for government to take relatively small amounts of money, support entrepreneurs, make it easy for them to get capital, including, by the way, immigrant entrepreneurs, and have businesses grow with a little bit of public support. I think that makes a tremendous amount of sense. And the two other pieces to me are, we should be the best place to work, the best place to be a worker. That will help us grow our jobs. Part of that is elevating minimum wage. I'm actually for a living wage. Seattle went to $15 an hour, They're going there, and they're no fools. Right. They know the economics. When wages are fair, that money circulates. That generates business.
Exactly. That's basic economics. That's economics 101. The marginal propensity to save versus the marginal propensity to spend.
Yeah. So if you want to depress an economy, take money away from workers. If you want to stimulate it, give it to workers. And that includes women, by the way. Women in this state get paid 77 cents for every dollar men get paid. So I think gender equity in pay is really important.
And there's more women making the minimum wage than men, certainly.
That's right. And earn sick time. On your bumper sticker, one of your bumper stickers is about union. The role of unions. We just saw another Supreme Court decision today, weakening unions further, and that's wrong. We need to stand up for workers. Yeah. The last piece of job growth is really important, and it's to be business friendly. I think a progressive agenda, a bold progressive agenda, is a jobs agenda. It adds help to businesses. One thing is simplifying regulations. I'm a progressive, but when I went and ran Medicare and Medicaid, I went to my staff. Actually, I went to the industry. I went to hospitals and doctors and Joint Commission and said, what are some stupid regulations? And they were only too happy to supply me a list. I brought them to my staff. I asked for 50 regs that we could stop. They gave me a list of 80. We eventually issued a regulation to take away 100 regulations.
Wow.
The other thing if I can just say one more thing, I know I'm carrying on here, but this is crucial, is single-payer health care. I can't think of a stronger job-creating strategy than rationalizing healthcare payment, which immediately will cut healthcare costs by 5 or 10%, maybe more. In Vermont, their plan says it'll cut costs 12% without harming a hair on a patient's head. It's just taking away burden. Now, that's good for government because then we have more money to support the safety net, but it's good for business. If you go to business owners and you say, what would help you stay in Massachusetts? They'll say, well, get healthcare costs under control. We're the most expensive state and the most expensive country in the world. Reduce healthcare costs without harming people. Right. How about Medicare for all, single payer care?
Well, we look at what's the percentage of the state budget that's spent on healthcare?
42%. 42%. And we know that a third of that is waste. We have 3 independent studies of the level of waste in expenditure. It doesn't help anybody. It's not curing illness. It's not helping patients. It's just waste. I did one of those 3 studies. The biggest form of waste is paperwork and complexity. Can you read your hospital bill, your insurance?
No,
of course you can't.
I actually have experience in this. In a former lifetime, I was a worker on a medical billing system up at Leahy Clinic in Burlington.
We create this complexity. If you want to add jobs to Massachusetts, simplify healthcare payment, so we would save that money and put it back into job growth and put it back in the pockets of workers and business. I ran Medicare. Our overhead rate was 1%. The average insurance overhead rate in this country is 15%,
right,
or more.
Right. And that's just money that's not going to anyone's care.
No, just
that's
makes
money
it more
that's
complicated.
just making it more complicated. I remember the myriad of various billing schemes that we had to keep up with in that billing system. It was ludicrous. It really was. And they would change. You know, suddenly, boom, now we have to go back and reprogram the system to do something different.
Some people get afraid when you talk about Medicare for All. They think you're talking about a government takeover of healthcare. Oh no, that's not what we're talking about. Healthcare is the same. Doctors, hospitals, they're not going to work for the government. They're going to be the entrepreneurs or nonprofits that they are. What we're talking about here is consolidating payment, the payment into a single stream, a single pool, and then making that publicly accountable and transparent so that the healthcare system can do its work better.
Okay, so somehow we segued from jobs and economy
I'm
to
sorry.
healthcare, but
Well,
that's quite all right.
It is important because they are quite related.
They're very, very, very much linked. Yes, absolutely. Let's talk about your education plans. Well, you know, that was another thing that we did kind of touch on a little bit. You know, that we need an educated workforce, but absolutely, let's talk about education.
Well, talking in three parts. I mean, first of all, we have a great education system in the Commonwealth. We're rated #1 in the nation on average, but the average doesn't tell you the story because I live in Newton, Massachusetts, and the graduation rate from high school in Newton is 96%. In Holyoke, it's 53%. They're all over the state. We have these inequities and inequalities in the way the healthcare system is able to do its work.
I'm sorry, the education system.
I'm sorry, is able to do its work.
Yep.
This comes from problems in the way the local aid and the Chapter 70 formula is distributed. It's old. It goes back to the 1990s. We haven't adjusted it for the stresses that are currently on our system, so there's financing changes we needed. But I think there's a matter of commitment. To me, it's three commitments. It's commitment to preschoolers, to pre-kindergarten. We should have pre-kindergarten available for 3- and 4-year-olds in the Commonwealth. I'm a pediatrician. I know what happens when a kid's not ready for school. It's bad for the kid, bad for the family, and by the way, it costs more money in the long run.
Right, right.
So universal pre-kindergarten, I think we should be heading toward, which also involves help to families that are under stress.
Right.
For elementary and secondary education, I think the main thing going wrong right now, aside from the funding formula, is that we're using standardized testing and teach to the test and high-stakes testing as if that's the answer, as if we use carrots and sticks, somehow things will just get better. No. What happens is the workforce, the teachers, they get demoralized, they feel treated disrespectfully, and they're handcuffed. They can't be inventive in the way they try to address the needs of the kids.
Sure.
We cut down on arts, we cut down on music. I was in Pittsfield, they just laid off 2 librarians in a school there. No, we need to put the power, the control, the pride back in the teaching workforce. Teachers aren't the problem, they're the solution. And I think developing much more opportunities for teachers, supporting them in their learning, in their professional development, that's much bigger.
I think paying them more would help as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the third is higher education. I mentioned that before. We have 29 community colleges, state universities. They are a gem. They're a treasure because kids who go there stay in the state, 90% or 85% do. They really are an on-ramp to mobility. So supporting higher education here, to me, makes a big sense. That means more coordination with businesses. I started a business. I'm a businessman, I guess, in addition to being a doctor. I started a nonprofit organization 25 years ago with nothing. It's now almost $40 million a year. It's worked in 70 countries. It works on healthcare improvement.
The Institute for Health Improvement, is that the?
IHI, yeah,
IHI.
The Institute for Healthcare Improvement. People, your viewers might want to go to IHI.org. They'll see that work.
Absolutely.
That's 20 years of my life.
Before we get too far afield from that, speaking of going to websites, your own website, how can people find out more about your campaign?
Berwickforgovernor.com.
Berwickforgovernor.com, so they can go there, they can volunteer.
Yes.
They can make donations, they can see all these issues that we're talking about today.
Yeah, we'll talk about momentum maybe in a few minutes, but we're really on a roll. We need help, and please sign up.
Last day of the quarter, everybody get out and.
That's right.
I'm sorry, by the time this gets on the air, it won't be the last day of the quarter anymore.
But back to the higher ed system. So yeah, supporting our schools, but also the students. The state used to cover I think it was about 80% of the cost of public higher education. Now it's down below 20%. I think it's 17%.
Right.
That's putting burden on families, some of whom really can't bear that burden.
Absolutely, yeah.
So part of my platform it's a program called Last Dollar Coverage. I first saw it in Indiana. It's a promise. It says if you're a kid in this state and you can't find another way to cover your college or university and you're qualified to go to our state higher education, we will pay for it. And the reason is because it's going to come back to us in multiples as you become a more productive member of the
Absolutely. You have a
economy.
more productive member of society, somebody who earns a higher income, pays more taxes.
Yep.
It does return. It's a multiplier effect. Again, sometimes these things are counterintuitive to people. People don't understand. They see the cost and they don't see anything else. They don't see any benefit.
You have to think like a businessman. When I ran my organization for 19 years, we're always thinking ahead. You invest now for payoff later. And I have to tell you, in that organization, by the way, we always had Northeastern cooperative students in. And it was wonderful. They were in school, but they were also in our company, and they would learn us, we would learn them. And by the time they graduated, a whole bunch of them, they were our new employees. We hired them.
Yeah,
and that's what I mean by that kind of cooperation. It's really important.
Yeah,
that's progressive.
Yeah, that is. So let's see, healthcare. That's a big one. Let's talk about healthcare. Where you've got a huge section on your website about that. In fact, I read all the way to the bottom, and then there's a link at the bottom saying for more, click here.
Sorry about that. It's one of my wheelhouse issues. I've worked on better care, better health, and lower cost in healthcare for 30 years. I was vice president of the HMO that I saw patients in years ago for 20 years, working on quality. I started this nonprofit which works on healthcare improvement all over the world. And then I ran the largest agency in federal government, but by budget, but it supplied healthcare. I mean, it paid for healthcare. Yep. So I know a lot about it. And here's what I know. I know from studying innovations all over the world and around this country that we can have what we need: better care, better health, and lower cost all at the same time. It requires a different kind of system. It isn't focused on hospitals, it's focused on home and well-being. It's invested in prevention. If you have a chronic illness, diabetes or congestive heart failure, it'll help you through your journey. You don't feel forgotten. When the care system is team-based and it's organized around health and wellness, when the patient is powerful and the family is supported, when the community's resources are mobilized, you can really get costs down while health soars. Mm-hmm. There's a system in Alaska. I used to work in Alaska a bit with the Indian Health Service. In 5 years, it reduced hospital use 53%.
Wow.
And they did it the right way, by coordinating care, more teams, people at home. But 53% decline in hospital use, that's I don't want to be in a hospital bed, do you? I want to be home.
No. Yeah, and it's so expensive too when you're in a hospital bed. I mean, the expense there is just unbelievable.
So it's better care, better health, and lower cost. And better health, by the way, means focusing on prevention, because if we change the way we view our exercise patterns, our nutrition, our stresses in society, things get better. By the way, the biggest health improvement overall is probably relieving poverty. Yeah. Because there's such a strong relationship between people who really are at the bottom end of the economic pyramid and health and well-being.
Sure. If you can't afford food, you not only do you suffer, but you have malnourishment, et cetera, and it all just, again, it's a multiplier there.
Absolutely. Yeah. So that's the delivery system, and I know what that looks like. That's what I've worked on. I think we need someone in that corner office, John, that understands what the future of healthcare needs to look like. We see this settlement with the Partners healthcare system, this big Goliath. I mean, it's a wonderful system. It saves lives every day, but it's way overgrown. It's dominating the market. And here we have a settlement that agrees to pay them their current prices plus inflation for many years, and they get to consolidate the market further with acquisition of other hospitals. That's not the way to get to home-based, team-based cooperative care. We need courage, boldness to get healthcare to go where it needs. And back to single payer. One mechanism of that, one way to get that voice is to pool the money that's going to healthcare into a single publicly accountable pool of resource. Now we can sit back and say, okay, we have the money now, where do we want it? More prevention? Okay, more prevention. Or home-based care that we really value, or mental health care, or right now in this state, I'll tell you, substance abuse treatment, because we have this heroin epidemic, which is taking over communities. We could make reasonable choices instead of supporting a status quo that's just so expensive and not really standing up for people.
Right, terrific. So let's talk a little bit about the environment. That's yet another of the big issues on your website, and it's obviously a big issue for everybody. We look at things like the Superstorm Sandy and what that did to New York. Can you imagine the devastation had Superstorm Sandy hit in Boston? I went to see Ed Markey at Faneuil Hall. He put up some pictures of what Boston would have looked like had the storm hit there.
Yeah, I think if you get to the Environmental League of Massachusetts website, you can see those pictures. They're mock photos of what would have happened, what it would have looked like if Hurricane Sandy hit. Waves would have been lapping at the steps of City Hall.
Yes.
A third of Boston would have been underwater.
Right.
So we have created on this planet already a serious problem. So actually, part of an environmental approach has got to be protection. They call it climate adaptation, which means, look, nature gave us some protection, floodplains, wetlands. We've really got to protect them because that keeps those storm surges from hitting the things we need to preserve. And also, it's building properly. You don't want your computers in the basement. You want them up on the 5th or 6th floor. So there's work to do around climate adaptation. This Governor Patrick, has, I think, put $50 million into preparedness. We need to do more than that. And I'm going to have a statewide lead for climate preparedness. But let's go back to the sources here. It's irresponsible energy policy, which has become addicted to fossil fuels, and we have to get unaddicted.
Yes, absolutely.
We can. I mean, this is partly my family project. You know, my wife is head of the Public Utilities Commission. My son works in solar energy, and I've bathed in kind of lessons learned about energy, proper energy use. What you have to do is conserve. The best energy plan is not to use it.
Right. Negawatts, they call it.
Negawatt. Exactly.
Instead of megawatts, it's negawatts. Don't use them.
Right. And we can do that. It means proper building codes. It means energy efficient appliances, a smart grid. It means supporting people to understand how to change their patterns of use, which we've done. I mean, we can do that. We do more of that. Remember, we didn't used to have any recycling.
Right.
Now there are communities that recycle 90% of their waste. We can do that with energy.
My daughter was very upset when she realized that they had given us a little tiny recycle bin. And she said, why do they give out these little tiny recycle bins? People fill that up and they think, okay, I'm done. I don't have to recycle anything else this week. My bin is full.
So we can learn.
Yeah. What she did was she took one of my big 20-gallon trash cans and a paintbrush.
What's her name?
She painted the recycle sign on the side of that trash can, and we used that.
Good for her.
Her name is Jillian.
Jillian,
yes.
Well, congratulate her. But that's a change in mentality, and we can do that with energy use. So that's the best thing, is conservation, energy efficiency. Second is clean energy, because there are sources of energy that don't add carbon to the world.
Right.
And Massachusetts can lead on that. We already are in solar. I mean, we had 4 megawatts of solar energy when this governor came in. We're headed for 1,600 megawatts.
Right, by 2020.
By 2020.
Yep.
Great goal. I think we can go farther than that.
Yeah.
There's hydroelectric power. We don't have much in this state, but we can bring it down from Canada if we could negotiate with Vermont, New Hampshire, and we will. As governor, that'll be a strong...
To get those power lines is what we need.
And then there's offshore wind. That's the actual big resource. It's 5 gigawatts. It's about half of our base load.
Yep.
Is in offshore wind resource if we will develop it. And if I'm governor, I will push very hard to get that wind resource developed.
I actually saw a study online a couple of years ago now. Nothing's been done about it, of course, because gridlock means nothing gets done. But I saw a study put forward by, I think it was University of Maryland and Stanford University combined to do the study. They quantified the wind resource off the Atlantic coast from North Carolina all the way to Maine. Yeah. They quantified the wind resource. And they developed a siting plan for 166,000 wind turbines. It would be out of migratory bird pathways, it would be out of shipping lanes, and it would be able to be put up out there.
Yep.
It would provide the entire energy needs of all of those states.
Yep.
Plus Metro DC, New York, Boston. Yeah. Tremendous opportunity there. And you look at, can we build 166,000 turbines with any kind of speed? Well, let's look at a comparable time in our history, World War II. In 1937, we had 2,000 airplanes. By 1945, we had 238,000 airplanes. Yeah. Yeah. Can we do it? Absolutely, we can.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen that study, and you're reminding me of those figures. There is a solution. The point is, there are solutions. Nothing's perfect here.
Right.
Nothing's perfect. We dug ourselves into a hole, and it's going to require effort to get out of that hole. But with clean energy development, by the way, it also adds jobs. our clean energy, that could be the new biotech for Massachusetts.
Absolutely,
And by the way, it doesn't have to be in Boston. It could be in the...
It could be in Fall River.
Absolutely.
It could be in New
the
Bedford.
Blackstone Valley.
Yeah.
We can develop the technologies and build on them.
Yep.
That adds jobs. We have 80,000 clean energy jobs already in this Commonwealth. 5,500 firms.
I'm holding down one of them.
There
so
you go. That's smart. And yes, it involves people accepting change. And but you know, we are in a hole together. Let's get out of it together. The third part of, there's conservation, there's clean energy, then there's residual fossil fuel reliance. We still have fossil fuels, and for a time we will. I'm glad we're shutting down the coal and oil-fired plants. Braden Point, Salem Harbor, Mount Tom's going to close now.
Yep.
That puts us in natural gas area for a while. It's not great because its prices are volatile. It is a fossil fuel. Methane's released.
Look what happened with the energy prices last fall. They jumped.
Just go like that.
Yeah.
So getting to clean energy faster is important. People out here in the West are very concerned now about the Kinder Morgan pipeline, the gas pipeline, and we need to make absolutely sure that we are diligent about not adding any more use of gas than we absolutely need. And one of the things I will do as governor, we will have a plan for fossil fuel and then getting off fossil fuel.
For weaning us off.
Yeah. While we're on that, I have to mention the nuclear issue. I mean, there are people really, really desperately worried about what's happening in Pilgrim nuclear power plant. You know, and its threat to Cape Cod, the Seabrook in the north, and nuclear is not a great solution either.
It's not. You look at Pilgrim, it's the same design as the Fukushima plant in Japan that's been leaking radiation into the Pacific Ocean since that disaster. Was it almost 2 years now, isn't it? It's coming up, I think it's at least 18 or 19 months since that's happened.
It's frightening, and there's no evacuation plan. You know, that was licensed without an evacuation plan from the Cape. So if I were, I empathize with these people. I wish we could turn a key and turn it off right now. I think it's going to require. It's
about 11% of our base load, isn't it? It provides quite a lot of power.
Yeah, Seabrook and Plymouth together it's in double digits. But again, it's a matter of taking responsibility, making a decision, setting a deadline, executing a plan. So that's important, and that goes back to conservation and clean energy. We can do that.
Right, absolutely. So. We talked about the environment and we kind of segued right into energy on that. Do you have any further thoughts on energy? I know that's a separate plank.
It has to do with internalizing the cost of carbon. Right now, when you fill your gas tank or put fuel oil in your heater, you're giving a massive subsidy to the fossil fuel industry. Because what happens is the companies that make that fossil fuel available, they're creating external costs in air pollution and asthma and global warming and Hurricane Sandy, and those costs are not in the cost of the fuel. If we're going to have the right policy, we've got to take the cost of carbon and put it in the price of carbon, and that means a carbon fee. And I know it's threatening. People wonder about it. We have great studies now that show if Massachusetts adopts a carbon tax, carbon fee, which I would want us to do, it adds jobs and adds to our economy for the simple reason we don't produce those fuels. We import them.
We import them
from other states. So this is our chance to keep our money at home. And so I support that. And then there's the issue of divestment, and we have a lot of state pension funds invested in stocks and mutual funds. My position on divestment is I think we should divest from really irresponsible fossil fuel companies, get our state money out of that, and work with other pension fund holders to do the same. And then what I want to do is there are some fossil fuel companies that are trying to make a transition. They're trying to get to clean energy as a business line, trying to do a proper accounting for the liabilities of fossil fuels they'll never get out of the ground. I want to exercise shareholder voice with other pension fund holders and insist as shareholders that they change their accounting practices, change their research programs, and I give them a short window of time to do that. So I want to use the voice that we've got to really change the way we think.
Yeah, almost like a bully pulpit from the governor. Yes. Kind of. Absolutely. Yet another reason why I'm supporting you, Don. I think you're a brave man, and I think that your style of leadership would really go a long way towards helping the state to continue to lead the nation forward. So we've talked about lots of stuff. Let's go to transportation. That's yet another bullet on your website where you talk about need for modern transportation infrastructure.
Yeah, I think transportation is two challenges for us at least. The first is just getting out of the problem we've dug ourselves into another hole with failure of maintenance and failure of just proper stewardship of the existing transportation system. We're way out of state of good repair. This is roads, rail, buses,
I
trains.
actually rode the commuter rail for quite a while going into Boston. I would go, commuter rail from Ford's Park in Franklin to South Station, and then I take the Red Line down into Dorchester where I was working. Wow. It was in a state of disrepair.
Yeah, it's unreliability, poor service. I mean, and they try, but man, we're way behind.
They're challenged. They're challenged with really bad infrastructure that's just suffering.
And that's coming from $15 billion of underinvestment. You know, you could have predicted this, but you know, we didn't have a governor and a legislature at that time that was saying, well, you know, change the oil in your car. We better keep our buses and rail going. The average railroad engine in Massachusetts, last time I looked, is 22 years old. You own 5,700 railroad engines. I bet you didn't know that.
I didn't know that, no.
The average age is 22 years. The average lifespan of a railroad engine is 20 years. So what do you expect?
What do you expect?
You got to maintenance, so we're behind.
I'd be on the Red Line and things would happen like the door would open in the middle of, while we're still moving on the tracks. Not good.
Not good. So the governor tried to get that gap closed 2 years ago in his budget. The legislature gave him about half that. Now we got a little more. But we just have to commit to closing that gap, and otherwise we're waiting for trouble. This, by the way, isn't just rail. This is bus lines. I mean, the regional transit authorities, as you know here, are life's blood. I remember it was really early in my campaign. I was out in Greenfield and talking to a very dignified woman, middle-aged woman, who started to talk about transport, and she started to tear up because she has a job. The job ends at 9 p.m. and the bus line stopped at 7, I guess, or something. She couldn't get home. This is people's lives we're talking about. And plus, if we want to be responsible with respect to fossil fuels and energy, we want public transportation that really works for people. So I think we've got a ways to go. So that's job one, is fixing it. Job two is more exciting in a way, and that's modernizing it. There are inventions all over this world of transit systems, innovations in smart roads where traffic patterns are engineered with real intelligence. We're not using them all here, and we could. My whole career has been about the basic principle that someone somewhere probably has an answer to a problem you've got, and your job is to find them, learn it,
to find that answer and use it and apply it in your own particular case.
Exactly.
We see things like hybrid buses. You know, we should have more of those. Why have diesel-powered buses? Have hybrid buses, and certainly they'll burn some fuel, but they'll use some electricity as well.
Smart streets, complete streets. Smart streets here's a cool example. So in Boston, you know, there's a bus line that goes from South Station to the airport.
Yep.
And it surfaces for a minute and crosses, I think, D Street in South Boston.
I've ridden that when I was working over by the harbor.
Yeah. Yep. So I don't know what the situation is now, but in the past, there's a stoplight there. So the bus comes up. If it's red, it stops. Well, a smart street, the bus has a transponder, the street corner has a transponder, and when the bus is approaching, it says, "Oh, bus coming, green," and so the bus never stops.
So the bus doesn't have to sit there and idle.
No, I want to be on that bus. I mean, that'll get me there faster, and it's just a technology. But we can be very, very clever about how we address this. Why don't we lead there also?
Right. We have the smarts to do it. We have the wherewithal. We have the intellectual capacity. Let's exercise it a little bit.
It'd be pretty exciting, you know. Put us in the foreground. Put us in the lead. Let's think globally, you know, and be the example.
Yeah.
Be the example.
Yeah. Well, we've been leading. We might as well continue. Let's talk about homelessness. That's yet another bullet on your issues list. I know that in Utah, of all places, they discovered something that was kind of confounding. Again, counterintuitive. So much of public policy is counterintuitive. They discovered that if you give a homeless person a home, it actually costs less than leaving them on the street.
Yeah, that's
true.
That's
let's talk about homelessness, because that's a theme that was on that page when I was reading it.
Let me say it's a case within the larger suite of interests I have in poverty and poverty alleviation. In the end, all means all. We need to imagine the end of poverty. I come from the 60s. You know, we had the war on poverty, and we thought about that. I thought about that, and where did it go? And if you want to be smart, if you want to grow jobs, if you want to have an economy that thrives, understand that poverty is your enemy. A person in poverty can't be a good customer. They can't be a good employee. They're trying, but they're not. So there's something about social justice and equality and compassion to me that is smart. And as I said before, a bold progressive is a job, is good for jobs.
Yep.
So let's tackle it. Now, there are symptoms of poverty. One is hunger. We have 3,000 hungry kids in this Commonwealth every night. 0. Let's go 0. We know what to do with that. Congressman McGovern has been leading nationally on this. Let's be the example. Let's show. Homelessness is another. Now, chronic homelessness, families that can't find home. Partly, there's complex issues around housing supply, and working on housing policy that generates more accessible, affordable housing, absolutely key. But I think we could decide to end homelessness in this state. Indeed, I worked in the organization that I started and grew, the Institute for Healthcare Improvement. We began working with a group that eventually got to be known as the 100,000 Homes Campaign. We had done the 100,000 Lives Campaign, trying to save 100,000 lives in American hospitals. Eventually we knitted together over 3,000 hospitals to make patient care safer, and tens of thousands of lives got saved. Well, they came to us to copy that and created the 100,000 Homes Campaign to house 100,000 people. And I think it was 2 weeks ago in Washington, that campaign had its celebration of the 100,000th family housed.
Oh, that's a tremendous success
for chronic
story.
homelessness. We could do that here.
Yep.
We decide, we work together community by community, and absolutely. I met a man a few months ago, his name was Ronald, and he's living in a motel room with his 4 kids and his partner at $4,000 a month, by the way. That's the bill to us.
Wow.
He has a right to a place. Do you know what a housing voucher would cost for him? About $1,200.
Yeah, I was going to say 1,000 to 1,500, somewhere in there. Yeah.
And yet, we've done in the state, we've cut the housing voucher program with supplement Section 8. So we used to have 160 million or so, I think, in the housing voucher program. Is down, I think, below 60 million. No, it doesn't make any sense.
Doesn't make any sense at all.
I think it's a human rights issue, actually.
Yeah. Well, the whole thing about that study that I wrote about what was going on in Utah, just a tremendous success story. Once you've got a home, then you can get a job.
Yeah.
And even if you don't get a job, just having that home makes all the difference.
It does. It has to be affordable. I mean, Ronald, the guy that I mentioned, he has a job. He's 30 or 40 hour a week. He's a warehouse manager. But in the market he's in, near the Boston market, he literally would have to take almost 100% of his salary and put it into the market. So we have to have affordable housing. That's key. But your point is right. We can do this. We have to decide to do it, and that's why I'm the boldest progressive in this field, and I don't apologize for that or mince words about it.
Well, you're unashamed of it, and that's what I like about you, Don.
We've got to stand up. We've got to
do.
stand up, and it'll help us. It's the way to get back to equality and growth in our Commonwealth, and give people optimism that this economy can serve them too.
So let's talk about corrections. That's kind of a natural segue from homelessness. We see a lot of recidivism, et cetera. You have some thoughts on that?
Yeah, our correction system in this great Commonwealth is not functioning well. We have 24,000 people in prison in Massachusetts. I believe that's the number now. About 12,000 in county houses of corrections, 12,000 in state prison. First of all, half of them don't belong in prison. And I'm not just me saying that. That's the sheriffs and the prison administrators that I've met with. They have mental health problems. They have substance abuse issues. They require alternatives to prison. They've done something wrong, something unwise. Not always a violent crime. But what they needed was not to be locked in a cell. They need to get into a program that'll help them deal with their substance abuse, with their addiction, with their behavior disorders. We can do that. States that do that reduce the prison population. They reduce the prison size, and they have people who get back to family and work. We are not anywhere near invested enough in that. Then when people are in our prisons, half of them, by the way, are there in pretrial detention. They're in our county house of correction. They're not even sentenced yet. They're there because we take them out of their families, out of their jobs, and we don't have the support systems. When we have them in prison, they need vocational rehabilitation, they need substance abuse care, mental health care. Get them ready to return. They will serve their time, pay their dues, and then return to society. How do we want them returned to society? How about ready to work, ready to be responsible, ready to be proud of what they can do, back with their families? That requires support in the prison, and then transition. You have to have a very well thought out transition, step down program back into the community. That takes resources, but it's well worth it. Our recidivism rate, return to prison rate, and I think it's a 5-year figure, It's about 60%,
Wow.
maybe 70. We know how to cut that in half, and you do it with the kind of supports I'm talking about. That, by the way, saves money and adds jobs, back to our theme.
Sure.
It's progressive
yeah,
because...
It's progressive because then we also end up with an increase in public responsibility and even taxes. These people are now productive, tax-paying members of society.
Absolutely, and all of the enforcement needs go down. Plus, it costs $42,000 a year to have someone in prison, and we have $1 billion of new prison construction in the capital budget plans of the Commonwealth. If I'm governor, zero, no new prison construction.
Right.
And
put that into transportation. Put that into
absolutely.
spots where it needs to go.
And let's take that $42,000 and take maybe, what, half of it, and say for that person who needs help, let's take $20,000 and put it into vocational training and mental health care and substance rehabilitation. Yeah, I mean, that's smarter. It's smarter, and we need to do that. If I'm governor, we'll have a corrections reform policy that really will work.
Okay, well, I didn't think it would be possible, but we got through just about every bullet on my list. Let's go back to basic values. We didn't talk about your basic values, which is right at the top of your issues list.
Yeah.
So your values and what causes you to want to be governor.
Well, I'm an executive, 30 years of executive leadership and trained by wonderful people. And I remember one rule I was taught was when values are strong, rules aren't so necessary. And when values are weak, rules are insufficient, they won't work. Leadership and proper delivery is about the values more than anything else. And the values that I care about that are making me want to run for governor are those values that Hubert Humphrey was talking about, the values that I was trained in the small town I grew up in. You help each other. It's social justice, equality, compassion. Yes, we accept it, we embrace it. We don't say it's naive, we say it's the answer. And that's how I feel, and I think this state can show that to the whole country.
Right. It's the we're all in this together type of thing.
I believe it.
So many people complain about taxes. My taxes are too high. I have to pay so much in taxes. My tax burden people talk about all the time. I don't look at taxes as a burden. I look at taxes, if you, maybe you don't want to call it a spending decision, okay, because it's not a decision. Taxes are mandatory, you have to pay them. But look at it like any other spending decision. If I'm paying $10,000 or $12,000 a year in taxes, what am I getting for my money? Am I getting a fair value for my money?
Every taxpayer, every resident has the not just the opportunity but the duty to ask that question. And I think government should run like a great business. You know when you're in the hands of a great business. They know about you, they care about you, they ask you how it's going, they're tuned in, and every nickel of your money that they take, they try to give you a nickel's worth of value. Mm-hmm. And waste is not acceptable. Waste poisons that. So a good leader, a good manager, for profit, not for profit, or government, focuses on that idea of value. Everything spent helps. When government fails to do that, when it isn't managed properly, when there's waste, when you wait too long at the RMV, when they won't answer the phone, or they treat you without respect, they don't have a right to your money. That's a company that's failing you, and that's true of government also. What I believe is you can use modern principles of proper quality management, focus on the customer in the way government operates, and I think that's a kind of deal. Now I have a right to ask you for your taxes, mm-hmm. because when you turn the money over, the prison population gets better care, and that's better for you. Joblessness goes down, that's better for you. Kids are succeeding in school,
yeah,
and
exactly.
what goes around comes around. But so well-run government is worth your taxes, and I think that's a case we have to make. Any progressive that wants to make that case for that moral test, I think also has the duty to deliver value, to understand that waste isn't. It's a violation of the deal.
Sure.
When I went to Medicare and Medicaid, that was the thinking I brought into that agency, not knowing how it would go down. But boy, I had 5,500 employees. Talked to them all on the third day. I said, we are going to focus on quality and excellence of execution and your customers, and that became the theme of my stay there. And they welcomed it. They want to be proud of their work. So do most people.
Yeah, well, it's really tremendous, the work that you've done already throughout your career, and especially as the head of CMS in Washington. I'm really excited about your candidacy, and I'm very pleased that you made All Politics is Local a stop on your campaign trail. We have about 5 minutes left. Is there anything else that you'd like to say to my viewers to make the case? The primary's coming up on September the 9th.
September 9th primary. It's my birthday.
That's your birthday.
Wish me happy birthday.
Well, there you go. The happy birthday with a vote.
A couple things. One is, you know, John, I've had this really interesting experience running for office. I've been at this, 16, 17 months now, I think. I'm in living rooms, libraries, town meetings, venues with people, and it's really common that when I leave, as I'm walking away, someone will grab my sleeve and say, "Don't forget us." Mm-hmm. That could be a Latino who's struggling to get into the economy because the poverty rate in Latino is 34% in this state. It could be the mother of a kid with special needs who's saying, the town can't meet the needs. Can you help us? It just might be a worker who's maybe lost a job, or much more commonly thinks they might, or a part of the state, someone in the western part of the state who doesn't have broadband internet, or in the south who doesn't have rail access to Boston, mm-hmm. or in the Cape worried about nuclear. Somebody's worried about something and they don't want to be forgotten. I guess that's what I want to emphasize. It's really important to remember, and that's how I want to govern. I want to assure people that if I'm governor, you'll be on my mind. That's the only way I know to lead. And I trust the local instincts that the community by community, people really do know what to do if you give them the chance to feel the power and the authority to act mm-hmm. on their own behalf and the behalf of their neighbors. So I guess that's my message. It's about this isn't about win-lose. It's about everybody feeling that they're remembered. My style as a leader, it's open door. I mean, it's access. I mean, you're never smarter than the workforce. You're never smarter than the people you're trying to help. And,
sure.
and being able to have them come in and talk and right. exchange.
The people that are on the ground doing the work that needs to be done, they're the ones with the real wisdom.
Yeah, or living in the communities that need the help.
Yep.
So. Yep.
And so much is done by town meeting here in Massachusetts too, which is one of the great things again about this Commonwealth. The town meeting is such an iconic part of life.
Yeah.
Whether it's open town meeting or elected town meeting, it's still so much is done that way.
You were talking before the show started about your father, and my memory of my father and mother. I grew up in a really, really small town. Uh-huh. And in that town, you helped each other. But we had town meeting. I remember I probably was 4 years old when I went to my first one. My mother and father would bring me there, and it was the town, and it was creating the future they wanted. Not always easy, lots of fighting, but it's really compelling.
But you create your future by participating.
Yeah.
I think Aristotle said that something along the lines of if freedom and equality are to be found truly in democracy, it will only be achieved when all people participate in democracy to the utmost.
And all means all.
And all means all. Absolutely, nice segue.
Yeah, I think that, I guess the point, from my point of view on candidacy, is I believe the voters of this state, they're going to have a choice between boldness, commitment to that stuff, to those values, and action on it. No casinos, single payer care, end of poverty, end of homelessness, no mince words, and timidity, which is not ready yet. We'll take a look. I'll have a conversation. Right. I think they're going to have a choice, frankly, between insiders and someone coming in from outside with extensive experience in the private sector and in around the world with how to try to make things better. That's what I want to bring to that office.
All right. Well, Don, thank you so much for being here tonight.
Pleasure.
Really do appreciate you taking the time. I know we've spent an entire hour here, and you've been here actually longer. But I know that you're a busy man, so taking the time to appear on my show it's been an honor talking to you, and I'm glad that you're here.
It flew by. Thank you.
All right. You've been watching All Politics is Local. All Politics is Local is a production of the Greater Blackstone Valley Democrats. For more information about the Greater Blackstone Valley Dems, go to our website, www.gbvdems.org. Tonight's guest was Don Berwick, and we really do thank him for being here. Thank you for tuning in, and good night.